Take your time, no rush in sharing who you are and if you're a student or a parent, but would love to know just so that Dave is able to think through how to best approach the conversation today. It does give us a bit of a sense. Also, if you are an international student, you definitely want to let us know in the chat because that would be a little different for you guys to think through scholarships.
Looks like we have a parent from Long Island. I work with quite a few students on Long Island, so very good. Junior in San Diego, my favorite city. Um, Used to spend a lot of time there in my youth. Uh, Aaron from San Jose, hello.
Sweet. We have a few folks from California and Long Island, the two coasts.
Yeah,
Sweet. Awesome. More people are coming in, but for those who just joined, we were just chatting a little bit before we start. We would love to know if you are a student or a parent, and if you are a student here with your parent, let us know in the chat too. Gives us a sense of who's here. And also feel free to come off camera. Always great to see you guys and interact.
it's nice to see that we have juniors and parents of juniors because most people wait until their senior year, and that's one of the things I'm going to talk about is that you don't need to wait.
Absolutely. So glad to see a lot of folks thinking ahead.
Yeah, yep,
It's good to start early.
exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. All right. We have a couple more minutes and I promise we'll get started promptly. I do like to be respectful of everyone's time, but just given the whole Zoom link, having to log on, sometimes folks get a little bit delayed with Zoom re-downloading or internet issues. So I like to give that 5-minute time frame before starting. So hope that's okay with all. I saw a few people just join. Please share with us if you're a student or a parent and where you're joining us from location-wise. It is super helpful for Dave to know where you guys are located, whether here in the US or abroad, because that will shape up the conversation given the advice that he will be able to provide you with. All right, more people are coming in. Ariana is a rising senior living in Houston, Texas. Sweet.
Cool.
Awesome.
See someone from Salt Lake City, Utah. My best friend lives just outside Salt Lake City.
Never been, but definitely want to go one day.
Yeah, it's very pretty there.
All right, I see that it's 7:05, so I'm just gonna go ahead and say, Dave, please take it away. But thank you all so much for being here tonight to hear from Dave, the person behind Scholarship GPS, and he's very, very well versed in everything scholarships. So he'll be able to give you guys a good sense of what to expect as you approach the application process and how to maximize scholarship opportunities. And without further ado, I'm just going to pass it over.
Oh, thank you so much. I appreciate it. Give me just one second. I want to be able to share my screen, share a presentation here. All right. Great. So, because we did not know what years in school everyone was and where they were coming from, I decided to call my presentation tonight Scholarships for All Students. The other reason is that I believe scholarships actually are for all students, and we will talk a little bit more about that as we get into it. So here's what we're going to cover tonight. I will introduce myself so you know who this guy on your screen is and why I think I'm qualified to be talking to you about scholarships. We will then talk about 5 scholarship myths. We'll talk about the different types of scholarships, which is very important. We'll talk about the process for winning scholarships, and then I'll share some scholarship resources. And if we have time, we'll have Q&A as well. So, who is Dave the Scholarship Coach? Well, first and foremost, I am a father, and that's actually how I got into the world of scholarships. My son, from a very young age, had a career path that he had chosen that we knew was going to mean he would need to go to college, but we had not failed, or we had failed to save enough money to pay for college. And when he hit high school, it really struck home that we had failed to save enough money to help him get through college without student loan debt. So I started to learn everything I could about scholarships, and he started applying as a high school junior, which we have some juniors on the meeting tonight. So I'm glad to hear that. He actually won three scholarships as a high school junior, and then his senior year of high school. His total number of outside scholarships he earned, and we'll explain what that means in a minute, was I think it's 17 or 18. I actually have lost track, but it was a significant number of scholarships, so many so that we got him off to college. That a lot of our friends and family started asking us, "How did you do this?" So for the next year, while he was in his first year of college, I worked with some friends and family's kids, and between working with my son and these other students, realized that there's a very common process and that basically there's a methodology for earning scholarships. So it was those two experiences that I just decided to start my company, Scholarship GPS. One of my early students started calling me Dave the Scholarship Coach because he couldn't think of my last name, which is Peterson, by the way, if I didn't say that. So I took on that moniker, and that's you'll find me primarily as Dave the Scholarship Coach on social media. I do want to just circle back to my son's experience. He ultimately did graduate college, and we only spent $1,500 for his degree. That includes tuition, room, board, books, fees. Um, Basically, everything else was covered by scholarships, and we'll talk a little bit about the two different categories of scholarships that he earned. So today, my role as a scholarship coach is to help parents and students achieve a debt-free degree, or at least get as close as we can to that. So that is how I got into the world of scholarships. Let's actually talk about scholarships. So let's start by talking about five scholarship myths that I often hear. One is that people say, we make too much money, we don't qualify for scholarships. Another is that people will say, well, my student's grades are too low, or maybe their test scores are too low. They don't think the student will qualify. Some people think that scholarships are only for athletes. They'll say, my student's not an athlete, so we're not going to earn any scholarships. Other people say, my student is too young to earn scholarships. And then, kind of the opposite of that, some people will say it's too late, that we've missed all the scholarship opportunities. Well, let's take a look at each of these real quick. So, we make too much money to earn scholarships. None of the scholarships my son earned had anything to do with our family finances. We'll talk about the one category of scholarships in a moment that financial need is a consideration. But most other scholarships in the other two categories don't look at finances at all. So students can earn scholarships regardless of their financial situation. Um, let's talk about the myth that you have to be basically a straight A student to earn scholarships. Again, my son, although a good student, was not in the top 10% of his high school graduating class, and certainly did not have elite test scores. Was not a 4.0 student. There's really only one type in one category of scholarship that your grades and test scores are the only consideration. In fact, there's actually a lot of scholarships that are not going to even ask for a GPA or test score information at all. What's most important to most scholarships is the student's personal narrative, and we'll talk a little bit more about what that means. But really, for most scholarships, this is going to be far more important than the student's grades or test scores. My student is not an athlete, so we cannot earn scholarships. Well, my son will be the first to tell you he is not an athlete. He only played 1 year of youth baseball before high school. He did earn a scholarship for it, and the way he earned that was that his essay for this particular organization was about how terrible of a baseball player he was. So he did not earn it because he was a good athlete. He actually earned it for quite the opposite reason. Um, Only 1% of high school athletes earn any type of athletic scholarship, much less a full ride scholarship. And really, most scholarships do not look at athletic ability at all. However, athletics can be a part of a student's personal narrative. So if you're not an athlete, don't worry, there are lots of scholarships for you. But if you are an athlete, that might help you with some scholarships. My student is too young to earn scholarships. This is probably the most common myth that I hear. I mentioned earlier my son won his first scholarship as a high school junior, and we wish he actually started earlier. We wish we had thought of this earlier. We kind of had the same impression that scholarships were just a thing for high school seniors, and have since found out that's definitely not the case. In fact, students can actually start earning scholarships as early as grade school or elementary school. Now, most of these are not expecting the student to write a college level essay. Some of these for like a first or second grader would be like a coloring contest, but they still fall under the broader umbrella of scholarships. By the time a student gets into middle school, some of the scholarships would be essay based, and then there are lots of scholarships all throughout high school. So there's a lot of value in having a young student apply. It becomes part of the family habits and traditions, and they will get better with each passing year. And they will also potentially earn some money for college. So that's one reason we say we wish my son had started earlier. Um, I actually have one of my families that I'm working with. They have a fourth grader who recently won a $2,500 scholarship. So, not going to cover 4 years of tuition, but it's a great start for a fourth grader. I apologize if y'all can hear that in the background. My weather radio is going off. Hopefully, my wife will turn it off. All right, fifth myth. It is too late for my student to earn scholarships. So, for us, my son, like I said, started earning scholarships as a high school junior, and he continued to earn them all through college. In fact, he earned them every year he was in college. So, if you are already in college, don't think that you've missed all your opportunities. There are plenty of scholarships you can continue to apply for all through college. Really, the only time it is too late to earn scholarships is if you have graduated. And even that is a little bit off. I have found one or two scholarships that says if you've graduated and you have student loans, we will help pay them off. So I guess I probably need to change this slide. So let's talk about the three different types or categories of scholarships. I put everything basically into three buckets. First would be need-based scholarships based on a family's income and assets. Um, these types of scholarships come directly from the colleges. And like I said, they're based on a family's income and assets. Basically, the lower your income or the fewer assets you have, the more scholarships you can earn in this bucket, this need-based category. In the US, most colleges use something called the FAFSA, the Free Application for Federal Student Aid, to determine who needs scholarships. Unfortunately, anybody in the middle class, and middle class is probably defined a little differently by the government than it is for you and I, they're very surprised to find out that they don't qualify for any need-based aid. One family I worked with whose household income was a little under $100,000 found out from FAFSA that they should expect to pay $25,000 a year for their one student. So people are often very surprised that they don't qualify for much, if any, need-based student aid. Also, just wanted to mention something about student loans. We took student loans off the table. That just wasn't something we wanted our son to be stuck with. But even if you're thinking about student loans, be aware of a couple things. One is that even with a great credit score, families are finding they're getting quotes of like 14 to 16%. If you don't have great credit, sometimes you might not even be able to take a student loan. The other thing is that a lot of people are not aware of is that first year students here in the US can only take $5,500 in student loans. And if that's not enough, that means you, the parent, are going to be on the hook for the rest, either as a co-signer or fully signing for the loan. Now that $5,500 does go up every year, but it caps out at $7,500 per year for seniors. So think that total loan amount that students can take is something like 23 or 24,000 over the course of their 4 years. So certainly not enough to cover everything that most people will need. All right, so let's move on to the second type of scholarship, merit-based scholarship. These are based on students' proven abilities, basically their resume. Just like need-based scholarships come from the colleges, merit-based scholarships also come from the colleges. And sometimes these are awarded based on a student's academic abilities. It could be an artistic scholarship or an athletic scholarship. For those of us who are not great artists or athletes, I'm just going to focus on the academics because that is really the bulk of the merit-based scholarships that are available. Basically, the higher your GPA, the more you could potentially earn in merit-based scholarships, or the higher your standardized test scores, you could potentially earn more in scholarships. However, merit-based scholarships are not necessarily guaranteed. I do recommend if you are looking at colleges, you can go on their website and look for something called a merit aid grid. Now, very few colleges actually have these, but for those who do, it's very helpful because it's going to say if you have X GPA and X test score, we guarantee you are going to get this amount in merit-based scholarships. For the rest of the colleges in the country, it's a bit of a black box, and you can use some of the tools that they have on their site to get an estimate. But for those schools, that merit aid is not guaranteed. If you can't find it on their website guaranteeing what you're going to get, it is not guaranteed. I pulled this from a Facebook group that I'm in. This is the mother of a class valedictorian. Perfect ACT score, virtually perfect SAT score, great things on their resume, and student wanted to go to a fairly well-known college, but certainly not like an Ivy League or even really the next tier down, at least as far as I would consider it. This is a Big Ten Midwest school. Student did get into that college, but they did not offer any merit aid despite having this great resume. Student also applied to his in-state flagship school, and they only gave him $3,000 for the year. So merit aid, if you can't find on the school website that it's guaranteed, do not think that it's going to be guaranteed, and it's might not be as easy as you hope. Conversely, this is an email that one of the students I work with shared with me. She earned a full tuition scholarship this year. Now, she was also, or actually, she is class valedictorian. In fact, she sent me her speech to help edit tonight. So she is this year's class valedictorian for her school. And I'm sharing this because this is an instance where the merit scholarship, this full tuition scholarship, was not automatic. She and I worked together to help submit her application and essay for it. And then we also worked together to prepare her for an interview that was required to earn this scholarship. So if you are a high stat student, know that there are these opportunities available. But again, unless you find that merit aid grid, know that it's not guaranteed. A quote from her mom. So talking about the repetitive process of writing her personal narrative essays and really building that out over the course of the year that I worked with her. All right, so that brings us to the third category of scholarships, private or sometimes called outside scholarships. And these, for a large part, are based on the amount of time and effort that students will put into applying for them. I'm going to talk personally for a moment. For us, this was about two-thirds of what my son earned. So very, very important for us, and I'll share a few other examples as well. But these don't come from the colleges. These come instead from businesses and philanthropic organizations. Some of these scholarships will actually send you a check if you're the winner. So it can be a little bit of extra income for you. And the best part, in my opinion, about private scholarships is that they can be used at any college in the country. And in fact, if you transfer colleges, these scholarships are still yours. You will not lose them, unlike merit aid, where if you get merit aid from college X and then you decide to transfer to college Y, you've lost that. And it's very difficult to get merit aid as a transfer student, even more so than as an incoming freshman. So to me, private scholarships are very important. This is a student I worked with, class of 2024. His name is Talon and his mom, Audria. She called him a very average student, and I do think that's a fair description. He was by no means class valedictorian. He was very much in the middle of his graduating class, very nice and hardworking student, but not a top academic performer. He ultimately went on to earn over $111,000 in private scholarships. And in fact, his after his first semester in college, his college sent him a check for $24,000 because he had earned so many scholarships that just sent the money in that he got a refund. Now, do be aware that not every college will do that. So you do need to learn about something called scholarship stacking and scholarship displacement. Stacking is where the college will allow you to continue to stack scholarships either up to your the full cost of attendance, or where talent goes beyond and they cut them a check. Scholarship displacement is where if you bring in outside scholarships, they will take away scholarships that they have provided to you. So know your school's policy, but even if your school is a full displacement school, it until you're actually in that college, you don't necessarily know what you're going to have. So it's still worth applying for outside scholarships, I believe. Ultimately, it doesn't really matter which of these sources you're able to tap into, but we just want to get to as close to a full ride as we can get. We want to get through debt free if possible, and of course, we want to keep our family savings intact. So tap into any and all of these that you can, but please don't overlook the private outside scholarship piece. So, how do you win these scholarships? Well, there are 5 steps. First of all, you have to find them. So, where do you find them? Well, there are about a dozen scholarship databases that I recommend. Scholarships.com is kind of my first stop, but there's another dozen or so that are really good that if I'm looking for scholarships for a student that I'll tap into. You can jump on Google or today, these days you can use something like ChatGPT and say, what are some scholarships for, and then describe the student. So, what are some scholarships for students in California, or what are some scholarships for future engineers? Really, anything that describes the student could be even something trivial like, are there scholarships for left-handers? And the answer is yes. So, literally anything you can think of to describe the student, you might find a scholarship for. Your high school guidance counselor may be a good resource. I have seen some that are fantastic and really on top of scholarships. I've also unfortunately seen some school counselors who don't know the first thing about scholarships. So your mileage may vary as you are looking at colleges. Most of the colleges in the US automatically consider incoming students for most merit aid, but there are some colleges that may have some scholarships that require a separate application. So be aware of that. Also, once you're in your major in college, your department may have additional scholarships that you might need to find out about to apply for. We said that outside scholarships come from businesses and philanthropic organizations. So think both far and wide. Big multinationals like Coca-Cola and Chick-fil-A offer scholarships, but your local electric company may offer a scholarship. That's pretty common. Lawyers and doctors and dentists and lawn care companies in your area may all offer scholarships. So anywhere and everywhere you can think of, look for scholarship. So step 2 is filtering that list. If you spend any time looking for scholarships, you will find more scholarships than you could possibly hope to apply for. So how do you filter that list to apply for the ones that give you the best shot at winning? Well, think in concentric circles, and at the outside ring would be eligibility. Could you actually win this? Do you qualify? Whether it's based on where you live or your future major or what have you. Assuming you qualify, let's now look at the due date. Did I find a scholarship tonight that's due tomorrow that requires a 1,000-word essay? Oh, maybe we'll work on it again next year if we're going to still be eligible, but we're probably not going to do a great job if it's due in 8 hours. So let's move on. But by the same token, don't work on a scholarship that's not due for 6 months. There are plenty of scholarships you can work on that have a far enough in advance due date that you can actually submit a good application, but not so far in advance that you're missing other opportunities. You almost always want to prioritize local scholarships. These would be scholarships in your state, your county, your city, sometimes even just for your high school. Because you're reducing the geographic ability to apply, that means you have less competition, means it's easier to win. If a scholarship has multiple winners and prizes, that's another thing that you might want to bump the scholarship up on your list for. There is a scholarship I recommend to high school seniors that it works out to essentially a 1 in 12 chance of earning. So because they give away over 4,000 prizes, it is definitely one that students should apply for. little counterintuitively, but don't just apply for the big scholarships like the Coca-Cola and the Chick-fil-A. These smaller scholarships really can add up, and most students, first of all, most students don't bother applying for scholarships, period. But students who do, most of them are applying for those big ones. If you find small scholarships, you're going to have much less competition, so they're much easier to win. But ultimately, you want to find the scholarships where you're the perfect target, as they're talking about what they're looking for, or you can even glean this information from what they're asking you to submit. You can say, "Oh, this sounds like it's up my alley," or you can say, "I'm probably not a good candidate. Let's move on to the next one." So step three is the application process. There are lots of best practices, but the first one seems obvious, but believe it or not, is apparently not to many students because I talk to tons of scholarship providers. I interview them for my podcast, and just have reason to talk to them for, on behalf of my students and whatnot. They all tell me that they reject more applications than they accept, sometimes rejecting as many as 90% of scholarships because students don't follow directions. So if you want to win a scholarship, you have to start there. You have to follow the scholarship directions. Beyond that, be accurate and truthful and professional in your application. Little things matter, even the email address that you're using to submit your essay, or excuse me, your scholarship application. Um, you know, like first name dot last name at Gmail, perfect. That's great and professional. It's cool skater dude at Gmail, maybe not that great unless you're applying for a skating scholarship. If there's a secret sauce for earning scholarships, it is the fact that scholarships are looking for students with a good personal narrative, and that is built around five pillars: academics, extracurriculars, volunteering, leadership, and work and employment experience. Now, that is not a checklist saying that you need to, have a certain GPA and you need to be involved in three clubs and you need 100 volunteer hours and so forth. These are just different areas that students can demonstrate their interests and abilities. The student's personal narrative, though, is not just about that backward looking piece. It's not just about what's on their resume. It's also about where are they headed? What are their goals and what do they hope to achieve? And frankly, many scholarships also want to know, how's the world going to be a better place? That doesn't mean that you have to say you're going to cure cancer. It can be a very realistic and modest goal, but they do want to know that you're thinking about what your impact on the world's going to be. So that's the application process. Step four is keeping track of everything. Of course, you want to keep track of a list of scholarships that you hope to apply for, but also keep track of the ones that you have already applied for, and check your list and even check your scholarship email regularly. Scholarships have a very small window to claim your prize, and you don't want to miss it. So check that email every day once you start applying for scholarships. Know when you expect to hear from them. You will probably not hear from the scholarship if you're not selected as the winner, although some do have the courtesy to send out an email saying, sorry, thank you for applying, but you weren't selected. But more often than not, if you don't see an email, you should jump on the scholarship website and see if they have made an announcement. If you have already applied to a scholarship this year and you will be eligible next year, pop it down on your list to apply again. You've probably done most of the work already, so why not leverage that to apply for the same scholarship next year? If you're not the winner, try to figure out who did win and why. They'll often post the winner's bio. Sometimes they'll post the essay that went along with their application, and you can gain a lot of information from that. That's very important if you are going to apply next year, but you could even leverage that if you're, the first time you apply. You can gain a lot of inside info about what the scholarship is looking for based on who they have selected in the past. Finally, what do you do when you win? Step five. It's not just as a matter of waking up one day with a $5,000 scholarship in your bank account. There are a few things you need to do. First is celebrate. You should be very happy that you did earn a scholarship. But then here's that reason for checking your email every day. You're going to have to do something to claim your prize. And whatever that is, follow those instructions and do so immediately. Scholarships can have a very small window to claim that prize. So you don't want to miss it. Scholarships, if they say you need to reply within 2 weeks of getting this email, they mean it. If you go 3 weeks, they're going to say, sorry, we've already sent this to somebody else now. If it's a renewable scholarship, know what those requirements are so that you don't lose it the next year. Typically, this will be maintaining a specific GPA in college, but there could be other requirements, so know what they are. send a thank you letter or an email to the scholarship provider. Two reasons for that. I'll get to the second in a moment, but the first is that it's just common courtesy. You're basically getting free money. The scholarship doesn't really get anything out of it, so simply thanking them is the proper thing to do. Second reason is that some scholarships provide other opportunities for their scholarship winners. This can range from, well, we saw a picture of Talon, my former student, earlier. He got the chance to meet with the C-level executives of a company that offered him a scholarship or gave him a scholarship, and they liked him so much that he is now an intern at that company. So, if he had not sent a thank you, I don't think they would have offered to even meet with him. So, you definitely want to thank the providers for those scholarships. And then finally, use those funds wisely. Of course, spend your money only on college related expenses, but more so what I'm saying here is know how each scholarship is structured so that you can get every dime that you have earned. All right, so that's the 5 steps. Let me share a few of my resources with you. I have 2 free resources. I have a daily newsletter called Your Daily Scholarship. Monday through Friday, I feature a different scholarship opportunity. Saturday, I feature what are called weekender scholarships. These are very quick, no essay scholarships, but they are legitimate because they do actually select a winner, even though they are a bit like winning the lottery. Sundays, I feature interviews with different people who are experts in their field related to college-bound concerns, whether it's admissions experts, SAT prep coaches, even organizations like our host tonight. So, I think it's a great resource. Again, free. If you don't want to get that daily email, you can still get that information because I put all of that in my weekly podcast. It's a recap of the scholarships that I featured the past week, plus those interviews. So a couple free resources. I will mention I do have a online course, Scholarship GPS. This is an on-demand video-based course. Bite-sized learning lessons are very short, typically from 5 to 10 minutes. I do have a couple outliers where I couldn't say what needed to be said quite as quickly. But basically, this is a brain dump of everything I know about scholarships in a video-based format. Even includes some sample winning essays. The web address is there on the screen, QR code if you would like to learn more. Price of the program is normally $197, but I am offering half off through the end of the weekend. So if you use the coupon code Lumiere50, you will get it for half price. And with that, I will just pull up some testimonials of families that I have worked with. Again, that QR code will take you to the course. And at this point, I guess we'll open up for questions.
Thank you so, so much, Dave. This is super helpful. I have a 14-week-old baby, and now I'm thinking once he starts a grade school, I should start looking into those scholarships.
Yeah, yeah. I need to try to find one for younger than kindergarten. Kindergarten's the youngest age I've found to date, but who knows?
That's awesome. I'm so, so happy that you were able to share this information with our students tonight. And I really do hope a lot of them can take the opportunity to really dig deep into the available scholarships out there for them to reduce the cost of college and hopefully be debt free. I am still paying my college loans, and I wish I did more digging to pay off my debt, but hopefully I'll be done soon. But with that being said, would love to hear from students if they have any questions for you, Dave. Also, I know there are parents here, so please feel free to ask your question in the chat, and we'll be happy to discuss it with Dave directly here. We'll give you guys a couple of minutes to think through your questions. No need to rush in typing them out. But I guess, Dave, just from my perspective and Lumiere's perspective, are there any scholarships for students who engage in these types of experiences, like research oriented?
Yeah, that's a great question. That I'll give a twofold answer. The straight answer is yes, there are scholarships where having done research is, if not an entry requirement, something they may ask you to write about. So absolutely. But more importantly, and why I was so excited to partner with Lumiere is that this, doing research is a great way to build that student's personal narrative. These scholarships really, like I said earlier, they want to know the student is going to do something of note. I have to say, if you have not decided on your major, I'm not saying don't apply for scholarships, but you will have a much harder time earning scholarships than students who know where they're going. And doing college level research, with Lumiere or however you're doing it, looks great. It really builds that personal narrative and also is going to give you some great things to write about in your applications and essays. So yes, again, this is why I was so excited when we found each other because it's such a great fit. I'm always recommending students do more than just the basics. You do having a good cheap GPA will open up more scholarship opportunities, but frankly, that just kind of scratches the surface, and the more the student can show through academics, extracurriculars, volunteering, and leadership that they have a goal and a plan in mind, they will have more scholarship success. Absolutely.
Thank you so much. This is super helpful, and I'll keep it in mind too for students I work with directly. But yeah, just want to remind folks here, if you have questions, please feel free to type them up. But take your time. Like I said, when I work and I teach students, when I ask a question, they all think they have to answer me right away. I'm like, no, take your time. A couple minutes is fine. And I see a question already from Lucio. Would you say that a scholarship could ever be not worth it? Example, a 1,000 word essay for $100 gift card.
Yeah, I guess yes, I would say I would not have even I asked my son to apply for a lot of scholarships. I probably would not have even asked him to do that one. That's a long essay for $100 gift card. So yes, I would say there could be some scholarships that are not worth it. I will say though that most of your scholarship essays will probably be reusable. We talked about the three categories of scholarships. So what I'm going to say applies primarily to the outside scholarships. If you look at the outside scholarships, you can divide those further either into personal narrative scholarships where they're asking the student to talk about themselves, or topical scholarships where they're going to say, I don't know, tell us about the effects of inflation or, any topic, whatever it is. Those personal narrative essays have such common essay prompts. In fact, some of them are, you'll see literally word for word over and over, that you can reuse those essays. You may want to tweak it here and there just so it appears a little bit more original. But going back to this question, would I bother applying for a $100 gift card with a 1,000 word essay? Probably not. But if I'd already written the essay, which I very well may have, sure, spend 3 minutes popping that essay into their online form, put your name and contact info, hit submit, and you're good to go. I'd rather have $100 than not, I guess.
Absolutely. Thank you, Dave. And I guess from my perspective, strategy is super important.
Yeah.
And you need to make sure that you're spending time doing the right things, right? In anticipation for your college preparation. And I think working with Dave or, just strategizing in general, how you're dedicating your time between all the activities you're doing and writing and all of that, that's all about strategy and maximizing your
Mhm.
time, your time's worth.
Yep.
Yeah, so there is another question from Sharon, or Sharon. I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing your name. And they're asking, do colleges, universities offer any scholarships without applying them, just searching for students' GPA and SAT scores from their part? Does that happen at all?
Um, yes, but it's not super common. So, if a student takes, say, the PSAT or the SAT, they do get into some databases that colleges are leveraging, and you might find a college reaching out saying, we noticed your score and your profile. We'd like to offer you a scholarship. But for the most part, you are at least going to have to apply to the college. You may not need to apply for a separate scholarship from that college because most colleges automatically consider the students they're considering for admission for most of their scholarships. But I'm not going to say it never happens, but it's pretty rare.
Thank you so much, Dave. This
Mhm.
is super helpful. Still waiting for additional questions, but oh, there is a new question from Lucio. How much time should one spend on applying for scholarships? Sometimes it's hard to balance that along with school activities. Yeah.
Yep, great question. So part of my answer would be depends on where the student is in their academic career. We said that there are scholarships as young as elementary school. I would not expect an elementary school to spend much time at all, either on a daily or even an annual basis. You know, if a sixth grader did one or two a year, I would think that'd be fantastic. Maybe a little bit more in middle school. Even a high school freshman or sophomore, I would rather they spend their time building that personal narrative, doing extracurriculars. And then if there's a little extra time to apply for some scholarships, fantastic. But building that personal narrative is going to have more of an ROI, even on the scholarship perspective, in those early years. Seniors, though, I know that you have a lot on your plate, but I mean, the more time you can spend, the better. I do have a rule of thumb, but again, every student is different. But that rule of thumb for me is a high school senior can hopefully spend either 30 minutes a day, every day, or 3 hours a week. It all works out about the same. I think if a student is very diligent for, say, those 3 hours a week as a high school senior, they should be able to apply for enough scholarships to, if they're doing things properly and they have a good personal narrative, I think see some good success. Which does bring up the other point that scholarships, no matter how good you are as an applicant, is still a bit of a numbers game. My son was incredibly successful, and he only won 20% of the scholarships he applied for. So, um, if you think you're going to win 50%, man, if you do, please tell me because I would love to hear about it. Like I said, 20% is a really good win rate. So you do have to, even if you're applying the right way every time, you have to apply for a lot of scholarships.
Thank you so much for sharing that. I guess one question I have from my perspective, not a lot of kids know that there are all these available scholarships
Hmm.
there. So from my perspective, I mean, I'm sure the competition is fierce, but how fierce is the competition, and what is more competitive in terms of scholarship, I guess, um, types. Yes, scholarship types.
Mm.
It's more
Okay.
competitive, and yeah.
Yeah, yep. Well, local scholarships are going to be probably the least competitive for a couple reasons. One, that geographic boundary limits the number of potential applicants, but also they don't have the budget to market like the big scholarships do. So even if every student in, say, your zip code wants to apply for scholarships, unless they know how to find them, those local scholarships are not going to get the number of applicants. So those are going to be probably the ones that are easiest to win. My advice is different though than some other scholarship experts in that I do believe there is value in applying for some of the big senior year scholarships like Coca-Cola. Um, Actually, Coca-Cola is a good example because the first round, you don't even have to write an essay. It's just filling out their online application, which is a little lengthy, but the value in that is twofold. One, if you move to the second round, even if you got no further, that is a really big accomplishment you could put on your resume. Second would be literally the process of filling that Coca-Cola application out. Um, if that's say your first scholarship you're applying for, you're going to learn the kinds of things that you'll need to know for your other scholarship applications. So as you're filling it out, you're going to find that they're asking you to list your extracurriculars and tell them about how much time you spend per week doing them. And they're going to ask you to rank them in terms of order of importance, least to most. A student who's never seen a scholarship application won't have known that. So going through something like Coca-Cola provides that practice in a pretty not only hands-on, but what's the word I'm looking for? Like non-threatening way. They know they're learning kind of on the job of how we're going to do this. And so if they didn't have all that information at their fingertips, they'll gather it. And then moving forward, it's right there. They keep a file and they know what they need. So yeah, don't overlook those big national scholarships, but whether it's big national or local, don't put all your eggs in one basket. I guess one word of caution about local scholarships, especially if you live in a small community, sometimes those scholarships, even though they're supposed to be awarded fairly, can be awarded to the the big name in town or the most popular student, even if they're maybe not the most deserving. So that's why you want to spread the types and number of scholarships you apply for into different categories so that if you do live where they're awarding scholarships to their best friend's kid, it sucks, but you weren't, completely reliant on that.
Thank you so much. That's super, super helpful. Still waiting for more questions from students. I received one privately from a student that said, what's the smallest and largest scholarship your students have won?
Ooh, good question. Smallest might actually be one that my son won. He didn't apply for it to win this amount, but it was a third or a fourth place prize from a local organization, and they gave him 25 bucks. So we actually let him just keep that. We didn't save that for college. So, but oh, really good question. I've had a student, again, I'm only going to talk about private scholarships because that's where I'm working with students primarily. If they got merit aid, I do, even though I might have given some guidance, that was really based on their resume, which I didn't have a lot to do with. They did that themselves. So for private scholarships, I don't know. I had student win recently this past school year, Equitable, which is $20,000. Gosh, I lose track of the specific number, you know, each individual scholarship. But I think Talon's probably my biggest success story with 111,000 over the course of his senior year. Actually, I got an email today from one of my students who just won her 18th scholarship, 18th private scholarship this year. She's a graduating senior. We haven't run the numbers on her yet. Yeah, so I guess that's my answer.
That's awesome. No,
Yeah.
absolutely. And it is a game of numbers, right? You need
Mhm.
to apply to a lot and then see how much you can get.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
absolutely. I do have another question. Well, a student said, can they access these slides and links to the course and newsletter? We will be sending you guys a recording of today's conversation, as well as how to get in touch with Dave and his course, as well as his newsletter and his email. And there is another question from Sunil who's asking, is there anything you have seen weightage in winning scholarship, academic versus volunteering versus research?
Not quite sure what they're asking, but um, I would say some scholarships are more focused on the academic piece. They may have a higher GPA threshold to even apply. Lots of scholarships are very interested in students' volunteer history. That can be when I start working with students, I typically see of those five pillars, that is for most students the weakest one. A lot of parents think that it's all about the number of hours a student volunteers, and that's really not the case. It's more about the quality of what the student's doing, and from a scholarship perspective, especially, how does that align with the student's end goals? So I'll use my son as an example. He wanted to become a history professor. Now he actually has changed that. He's a practicing economist now, but kind of similar fields. But for what he did in high school, his main volunteer project was working at our local history museum in our town, where he was a tour guide, and he, as a side project for that same museum, built a display to honor local Vietnam War veterans. So really aligned with his interest in history, particularly military history. So, the more you can volunteer, the better. But it really, the quality of what you're doing and alignment with your future plans is even more important. In terms of the scholarships focus, yeah, some focus more on academics, some more on volunteering. There are some scholarships that are more interested in leadership. So really, it just kind of depends on where you think you shine.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Dave. And another question that came in privately is, are there students who apply for scholarships because of the job or work of their parents, for instance, military families?
Yes, absolutely. Military. students of military families, there are a ton of scholarships for, but that is a great source that I guess I failed to mention is that always look to see if you, the parent, if your employer offers scholarships, and also the student. If you're looking for a job, you might actually use that as part of the determination of where you're applying for a job. A lot of fast food restaurants offer scholarships. I mentioned Chick-fil-A. They actually have two different tracks. So they offer scholarships for anybody. Well, I shouldn't say anybody. Of course, you have to meet certain qualifications, but you don't have to be an employee. But they have a separate scholarship pool for their employees. So, if you're going to work at Bob's Burgers versus Chick-fil-A, you're probably going to make the same amount of money. Go work at Chick-fil-A where you could earn a scholarship. Chick-fil-A is not the only one, but just as an example. So yes, anything that you have a personal connection to or your family does, whether it's your employer, a union, um, clubs that you're in, organizations you're in, always look to see if they offer scholarships. Because first of all, it might be a requirement that you have some connection to be able to apply. And you'll probably be able to talk in a language that this organization is looking for. One word of caution, though, don't think that because you don't have an affiliation with an organization that automatically disqualifies you. For instance, the VFW, the Veterans of Foreign War, they offer a scholarship. It's my actual favorite scholarship because it's open to all high school students with no GPA requirement. Students can earn up to $35,000 at the top level, but it's almost $2 million in total prizes around the country. You don't have to have anything to do with the VFW. You don't have to have parents in the military. You don't have to have veterans in your family. It's open to any U.S. student. So, yes, look for scholarships in the organizations and things you're affiliated with. But, if you see, we'll use Chick-fil-A's again as an example. Just because it says Chick-fil-A on it, it doesn't mean you have to work there. Doesn't even mean you have to eat there.
Absolutely, absolutely. Those are such great insights and advice. We do have about 5 more minutes. So if there are any additional questions from students or parents, please send them. Maybe we can do one or two more. But again, if you do have specific questions and you're interested in establishing a conversation with Dave and having him help you guys, you should definitely reach out to him at Dave at .com, which is available right here on the screen, but we'll follow up with more information should you need that, as well as the recording, like I mentioned. And in the meantime, I'm just going to ask one last question for Dave, for those rising seniors. What should they be doing in terms of both scholarship prep, but also managing everything else they have to be doing in preparation for their senior year, given that you're working with many, many seniors or rising seniors and you're through this? How do you suggest for them to kind of strategize and think through the next few months?
Yeah, great question. So I would say, from a scholarship perspective, the first thing, it's that first step we talked about. You have to find them. So build your list of scholarships that you want to apply for over the next 12 months during your senior year. That way you can keep track of them and you can know, okay, this one's coming up. This one's important to me. I need to set aside some time to work on it. Um, if you haven't squared away the test scores you want, your SAT or ACT score, get those numbers where you want them as soon as you can. So that would mean taking tests or prepping over the summer. Um, and then beyond that, just block off time, whether it's every day or every week, that is just for scholarships. If it's not on your calendar, it's probably not going to happen. And the other bit of advice around that is the hardest part of scholarships is just getting started. The longer you delay getting started, the more likely you're going to continue delaying, and then you're going to wake up and it's graduation day. So just get started. One other thing on the college side is, as you're looking at colleges and applying, get on their financial aid website and find out what scholarships they do offer. Again, if they have guaranteed scholarships, know that, fantastic. But if they don't, run something that you'll find on every college's website called the net price calculator. They're pretty good. They're not guarantees, but they'll at least give you an idea of what you might expect in terms of a scholarship offer. And then don't put all your eggs in one basket. Just like you don't want to apply for just one type of scholarship, apply for lots of them. But also, don't assume that just because the net price calculator says you're gonna get a full ride, until you get that offer letter, you don't have that full ride. So just be aware of that.
Absolutely. Thank you so, so much, Dave. This was
Yeah.
such a thoughtful and meaningful conversation. It has given me a lot of great ideas for what I would do one day with my baby in the future.
Awesome.
But wish I did all of these things too when I was in college. But yeah, thank you all so, so much for being here tonight. And thank you, Dave, for all the information. Like I said, we will follow up with an email with all of this info and how to get in touch with Dave. And yeah, we wish you all the best of luck in your college application process. And please use us, use Dave, and use any guidance you can get. It takes a village to get the right amount of help in terms of financial planning, but also college planning. So we wish you the best of luck, and we're here if you need any help. All right. Thank you, everybody. Have a good rest.
Thank you.
Bye bye.